Those days. I remember those days.
Hello, Vinyl community. This is Tommy, and welcome to another musical adventure. Now, let me just go ahead and get the apologies out of the way, because I know if you've clicked on this video, what you're probably thinking, because if you've been following my channel the last few months, it feels like every video I'm doing is an R.E.M. video. And so I want to apologize for doing yet another R.E.M. video. Now, there's a reason behind this, and I hope you guys can follow along. And this video is really intended for people that may not be like diehard R.E.M. fans. If you are a diehard R.E.M. fan and you're here, thanks. Oh, and by the way, let me get it out of the way. Subscribe, like, comment. I do try to respond to all the comments that I get, and I appreciate it. And I thank everyone for taking time to hitting that subscribe button, and being a part of the channel here. Thanks. And so here's the thing. This video is about the last 5 R.E.M. albums. Now, the reason I waited to do this was because they've been being reissued, most of them, in the last year or so, with the final one coming out just a couple of weeks ago. And so it was great that I was able to complete my R.E.M. collection on vinyl. And so that was really cool. And so what I wanted to do, this stems from a discussion that I had with a good friend of mine that you've seen here on the channel, Ross. Hi, Ross. Hope you're doing well. But Ross was sort of going through discovering his R.E.M. or rediscovering his R.E.M. phase. And he got to New Adventures in Hi-Fi, and then which came out in 1996. Now, those of you who don't know the history of R.E.M. briefly, 4-piece band out of Athens, Georgia. Started a college underground thing, got really huge, signed a major record label deal with Warner Brothers. A lot of R.E.M. fans felt like that was when they went off the deep end. A lot of people said R.E.M. went off the deep end after the second album. Either way, this is a band that I grew up with, loving. Michael Stipe, Bill Berry, Peter Buck, and Mike Mills. 4 young dudes, formed a really great band, made some really great music. Well, they recorded this string of albums up from early 80s all the way until the mid-90s. And Bill Berry, the drummer, left the band, and they became a 3-piece band. Well, they soldiered on. The analogy they gave was that they were going to work as a 3-legged dog. A 3-legged dog still would work. And they released 5 more albums before breaking up. And so I wanted to go over those last 5 albums and give a little bit of a guide. Now, going back to Ross kind of went through all the albums chronologically, and when he got to the post-Bill Berry stuff, he really struggled with it. And I felt like that wasn't completely fair to the band, because I think R.E.M. went out on a high note. I think that they still made great music. Now, having said that, I don't think R.E.M. has made a terrible album. Now, some of you guys are probably going to disagree with me on some of my takes here. Hey, let me know. It's fine. I like lively discussion, and I mean, we're not going to argue or anything like that or get ugly. These are just my thoughts. Let me just say, get it out of the way, I like the post-Bill Berry R.E.M. It's a different band. Bill Berry contributed a lot musically to that group, and it showed. And it especially showed when they left. So, here's what I want to do with this video is talk about these last 5 albums, but I want to kind of give a rundown if you've kind of struggled with them, or that you kind of feel like, they weren't the same band after Bill Berry left. This is sort of my unofficial guide to how to approach the final 5. And so what I want to do is I'm not going to run through them in chronological order. What I'm going to do is run through them in the order I think you should listen to them and digest them and give them a proper listen. And so it's a little bit different. And like I said, some of you guys may go, holy smokes. And you may want to say this is a ranking. I don't know. I'll go ahead and say it's probably a ranking. These are my favorite to least favorite of the final 5. I don't usually do ranking videos. Sorry, Sam St. John. Just not my scene. I do like all these albums. Again, this isn't me sort of saying, this one is the perfect one and this one's not. But so let's get this through this so we can get this video on and you guys can start arguing with me about it. The first one I would say, like, if you don't know where to start with the three-piece REM, is Collapse Into Now. This was their final album, and it came out in 2011. The band announced their breakup just before this album was released. And it was a sad day for us longtime REM fans because it was, one of my favorite bands was breaking up. So Collapse Into Now was the final album, and produced by Jackknife Lee, who they had worked with on the previous album, Accelerate, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I felt like this was a band making a statement. Like, I think they kind of knew. I think they mentioned in interviews, like halfway through making this album, that they realized it was time to call it quits. And that was it. So I think they had a little bit of passion that they were in there, trying to make a good album. And I feel like it's a good REM album, and I feel like it bridges the Bill Berry stuff very well. It's a good, like, alternative, if you want to use that word. I'm not a big fan of it. Or rock album. The guitars are prominent. And it's got just some really good stuff on here. Discover, Oh My Heart, which is a great ballad. Mine Smell Like Honey, fantastic song. There's just some really good stuff on here. And I feel like if you're not familiar, you want to dip your toes into the water with the post Bill Berry REM, or the three-piece REM, this is a great place to start. The next one, I would say, in your adventure, or as you go forward, would be the next to last album. This was from 2008. This was Accelerate. Also produced by Jackknife Lee. This is a little bit noisier maybe than Collapse Into Now, but it's still a fantastic little record, guitar-driven. This, to me, after going through in real time, going through the post Bill Berry REM, this was the album to me that sort of like reminded me of why I loved REM. Is it as great as some of the triumphs of those earlier years? Maybe not, but I think this is a cool record, and I think it's got some really, really cool songs on it. Supernatural, Super Serious was the single off of this. That's a really cool song. Living Well is the Best Revenge. The opening track is really good. I'm Gonna DJ, which is a classic Michael Stipe, just sort of semi-rap kind of cool thing. I think this is a neat record, and to me, this and Collapse Into Now kind of go together. Now, here's where you guys are probably going to start going, what's the deal, Tommy? What are you thinking? I would say the next one on your list, and these next two are probably neck and neck, but I feel like if you're going to ease into the post Bill Berry REM and start with those other two, the next one I would go to is Reveal. Now, Reveal came out in 2001. This was chronologically, this was the second album after Bill Berry left. And to me, this was where I began to really, if anything, began to question what REM was doing. Like I said, they brought me back into the fold with the last two. But this is where I started to, I won't say lose interest, but, and going back on vinyl and listening to it, All the Way to Reno is a fantastic song. Imitation of Life, Summer Turns to High. There are some really, really good songs. Beach Ball. There are some really, really good songs on this album. And so I feel like it gets lost in the shuffle. But if you put this album on, you would be probably pleasantly surprised at how good it is. It's a pleasant listen. But I feel like it just, around this time, the band started to lose a little steam and it became, evident. Now, the next one is the one that was just recently reissued, is Up. This was the first album they made without Bill Berry as a three-piece. Came out in 1998. And this album, now, some of you are going to say, well, this is a much better album than Reveal. And I say they're pretty neck and neck. This album, though, if you're going in chronological order, is drastically different than what you've heard before. Now, REM albums famously have been different. I mean, if you go through those four-piece years, Monster doesn't sound like Murmur. And so this band was evolving. But you could tell here they were definitely making a statement, that they were breaking away from the rock sound that they had been the bedrock of what they had been doing. This album was produced by Pat McCarthy. Nigel Godrich was involved with the making of this record. So yeah, there's an obvious connection between Radiohead. I don't think this is necessarily a Radiohead album, but there definitely are more electronic sort of sounds on this album. Lotus is a cool rock song. Of course, most people are going to point to At My Most Beautiful, which is a lovely tribute to the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. It sounds like it could have easily come out of that Smiley Smile, Pet Sounds era. Really nice song. As an album, though, to me, it's good. It's a good album. Again, all these albums are good. Any other band, I dare say they might be a great album. But I feel like, after setting that bar, this feels to me, or felt like to me, a bit of a step back, which I applaud them for doing something different, for trying something different. And there are some really fantastic songs on Up, but you could tell this was a band making a statement outside of what they had been doing. Finally, the last one is the much maligned album 2004's Around the Sun. Now, those of you who have kind of been following my channel can go back and I kind of talk a little bit about this album and me struggling with even buying it, because when this album came out, it's like I played it and it didn't connect with me. R.E.M. albums up to that point, and you got to think, I grew up loving R.E.M. R.E.M. albums were an event, a release of an R.E.M. album, and every album seemed to always be met with some degree of anticipation. And it also was always kind of exciting to hear the new R.E.M. album. This was an album that my initial reaction to was, And, time has been good to this album. It's, again, better than I remembered. But it's not, when I'm looking at R.E.M. albums, this is not one of the early ones that I would grab. I think one of the famous things, and even the band has come out and kind of said they were pretty much going through the motions at this point, that they just didn't have the passion like would show up in the later years. And maybe this is the thing that fueled them to do Accelerate and Collapse in a Now, to make these really sort of classic sounding records. Now, having said that, there are some good songs. Again, Leaving New York is a really cool song. Wanderlust, Worst Joke Ever. They're Electron Blue, all are decent songs. My problem with this album, I think more than anything, is it maybe just be too long. You could probably make a great EP out of the material on this album, but just as an album, it's a lengthy listen. So there you go, the final 5 R.E.M. albums in the order that I think they should be listened to and played. So, I know that you guys are probably going to differ, particularly Reveal and Up are probably going to be 2 that you're going to feel like, maybe you got that wrong. And I'm okay with that. I feel like that's cool. You guys may feel like Collapse in a Now is the weakest of the bunch, and that's fine too as well. But they're albums that are definitely worth exploring. Being the completist that I am, and again, I talked about that in the previous video, it sort of was like, well, I had to have these, and I was glad to get them to add them to the collection. They're out on craft. They were cut by Kevin Gray at Coherent, which is kind of cool. So they sound really good. They're good pressings. And so you're not going to go wrong with the quality of these reissues. Of course, I'm skipping out on the deluxe box sets on them just because I don't know that I need to hear, a lot of outtakes from Up. It just, that's just a personal thing. But, as an album, it's one that I'll play every once in a while, and I'll enjoy it. So what are your thoughts, guys? The final 5 R.E.M. albums. Now, I can't make a promise because promises are just hard, but I will say that I will try to stay away from R.E.M. content for a while on my channel. I can't think of anything coming up. It just so happens that we had the Mickey Dolenz event in Athens. I wanted to bring you guys to that, and R.E.M. just kept showing up, randomly in the last few videos. That wasn't by design. It just is the timing. Either way, comment down below. What do you think? Hit the subscribe button. You know the drill. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me in and listening to me ramble. We'll see you next time.